AEW's first pay-per-view is in the books, ladies and gentlemen, and I do believe that they are off to a rip-roaring start. So let us talk about all of the big things and go over all of the results that happened on AEW Revolution. Now, in this video, I'm not going to go over every single thing. I might go into everything like briefly, but some other things I'm going to go into in more detail. So, without further ado, let's just go straight into things, shall we? Let's just start out with the main event last night, which was MJF, Hangman Adam Page, Texas Death. If Page lost, he's never going to challenge for the AEW World Title again. Like I said, this one, they had put themselves in another situation, like, Cody Rhodes at the beginning of the company, where it was like, you have your biggest babyface put up his ability to challenge for the main title. That's pretty ballsy. It was very, very ballsy. And speaking of ballsy, holy moly, did they do some ballsy stuff in this match. Like, this was a legitimate death match through and through. Glass, barbed wire, tables, tubes, blood, chains, all that good stuff used in this matchup. At one point, God, this is like, I want to say early on in the match, but not like 5 minutes. It's more like, I want to say closer to 10 minutes into the match. MJF takes out a freaking syringe, and I'm like, okay, one, I am not the biggest fan of needles, and whenever I go and get like shots, or if I have to go and get blood drawn, I know that's not my jam. It's just not my jam. And so I was just like, okay, he's probably going to just like, jab it in the tongue or in the cheek. And I was correct. He did put the needle in the cheek, but he pushed the needle through Page's cheek, and he started squirting the freaking fluid that was in the syringe out. And I'm just like, that is probably like the worst thing I've ever seen. And I was at Wrestle Dream not too long ago, Wrestle Dream last year, where I saw Darby get hoyed from the ring to the announce table and literally almost drown in a fish tank. And that's the worst thing that I've ever seen. But like I said, there was everything in this. Tombstone by MJF through a table. A Deadeye by Page through a table. Dog collar with chain. They ended up taking each other out through a table off the stage, and there's a whole lot of sparks going on. Just a lot of craziness. Lots of blood as well. But in the end, though, Page was going to go for one more buckshot lariat. MJF hits Page with the Dynamite Diamond Ring. And then, much as Hangman has done in the past, MJF hangs Page with the dog collar using the chain, and Page is out. Also love that Page, his face hit the camera and it left a imprint on the lens. I thought that was pretty cool. And Page didn't answer the 10 count. MJF retained the title, and Page can no longer challenge for the AEW World's title. Now, there are a few ways that you can circumvent this. One, you could have Page win the Owen later in the year. You could do that. Two, if MJF loses the title to a babyface, and that babyface says, you know what, Page, I'm going to grant you a title shot, that is a way that they can do that. Or three, if Page absolutely snaps, turns heel, and says, you know what, that thing that I said about me never challenging for the title, screw that, I'm going to challenge for the title anyway. That can be an option that they roll with. It's just because they never explored that with Cody when he was in the company. So now that we have this opportunity to explore that road, let's just say it'll be a very interesting, I would say maybe 6 to 9 months, maybe even a year for Hangman Page. We'll see where this story plays out. But yeah, was not expecting the result for this match, MJF retaining. But absolutely brutal match. I like my deathmatch stuff every once in a while. And whenever it does happen, it's like, just eating candy. It's absolute fun, absolute carnage. And I had a fun time watching this. Let's go to a different type of brutal match. Swerve Strickland versus Brody King. This one was brutal in a completely different way. Mainly due to the fact that they just used the ring. Like, Swerve bent Brody's fingers through the turnbuckle. Brody bent Swerve's spine against the ring post. They were using exposed turnbuckles. Like, it was a different kind of hardcore compared to what the death match was. But this was still really, really good stuff. They did, towards the tail end of the match, Swerve hit a swerve stomp, pinned Brody, but it was only a 1 count, which I found absolutely hysterical because they did a 1 count spot in the opening tag title match, which we will talk about. But in the end, though, Swerve did hit 3 house calls on Brody to win the match, and it looked as though Swerve was going to stomp Brody's head in on a cinder block, but Kenny Omega made his return and ran off Swerve and Prince Nana. So he is now back and is going to be gunning for Swerve. Since I brought it up, let's go forward to the beginning of the show, the first proper match on the show, because the Blackjack Battle Royal bled into the main show, which I'll just cover everything that happened on the pre-show. Boom and Doom, Big Boom AJ, and QT Marshall beat the Infantry, which was Sean Dean and Charlie Bravo. Willow retained her TBS title over Lena Cross, and Jack Perry won the national championship from Ricochet. He last eliminated Ricochet, and I was surprised by this. I was actually very, very surprised on this. Granted, Jack Perry had beaten Ricochet a couple of times leading into this show, but I did not think, because I sincerely thought, even though the Gates of Agony were sent away at the beginning of the match. I thought for sure they were still going to get involved somehow. But no, they did not. And Jack Perry is the new national champion. So be very interested to see what happens with him and his title reign. But, as I was stating before, let us talk about this opening tag match. FTR and the Bucks. Their only fifth encounter as just a straight up tag match. And boy, this match had a lot of stuff. First off, the Young Bucks came out with like their beginning AEW theme, the Super Kick Party theme. And they also came out with all the family because the show was taking place in California. FTR coming out in Boston Celtics inspired gear, which, you know, sports reference. Gotta love that. Sports heat. And then, yeah, these guys just put on an absolutely banging matchup. Of course, one of the Bucks, it was shoulder and back. I believe it was Nick Jackson. They also, they got worked over quite a bit. Think it was Dax who got busted open. So I was like, dang, we're already getting blood, and we have a Texas death match later on? That's going to be insane. Taking each other's moves. FTR hit a BTE trigger. Young Bucks hit a shattered machine. Actually, after that BTE trigger, that was the one count. Which I thought, okay, cool, that's a nice little reference to Revolution 2020 with the Bucks versus Page and Omega for the tag titles. I thought that was a really cool reference. But then they did it again with Swerve and Brody later on. And just lots of really good back and forth. But in the end, though, FTR hit a super shattered machine from the second rope to get the pin and the win. They are still the tag champs, but lights go out. And then the simple word of revenge showed up on the Tron. And out comes Mr. Adam Copeland. He is back from his little break, probably doing some promotion for, you know, Percy Jackson, but also taking some time off. But he's not the only person that has come back, because Mr. Christian Cage slid into the ring behind FTR and took them both out. And it appears as though we're going to get Cage and Cope versus FTR for them tag titles, either at Dynasty or at Double or Nothing. We'll have to wait and see. But first, I do believe we may have a number one contenders match with the Young Bucks in the future. So that will be very, very intriguing. But yeah, this was a really, really good way to open up the show. Cover off the women's matches pretty quickly. Thekla beat Krisstatlander in the 2 out of 3 falls match. Thekla got the first fall dirty. She held on to the ropes. Stat won the second fall with Saturday Night Fever. Stat got the visual pin for the third fall, but then the Sisters of Sin came out. Stat beat them both up, but then Thekla hit a spear and 2 stomps for the third and deciding fall to retain the women's title. Divine Dominion, meganbayne and Lena Cross beat the Babes of Wrath to win the women's tag titles. No shocker there. Divine Dominion attacked Willow after the TBS title match on the pre-show, softened up the shoulder. It was pretty much game set match right there. But then the one that well, I'd say the result wouldn't shock me, but what happened afterwards did. Toni Storm versus Marina Shafir. Relatively solid match between the two of them. Toni ends up winning the match with a small package. She makes her way up the ramp doing, all the Hollywood and glitz and glamour and stuff like that. But then somebody appears in the ring. And it's Ronda Rousey. And is basically trying to get Toni Storm back in the ring. And Toni does get back into the ring. Ronda and Toni square up. Security and refs break it up. Marina then comes in, gets a cheap shot on Toni, and then her and Ronda make their way to the back, or make their way through the crowd, essentially. Now, I've already seen a few people kind of poo-poo this, and I'm here to say a couple things. One, she's not officially signed, so she could just be making a couple of appearances here and there just to do a little bit of promotional stuff before she has her fight with Gina Carano in May. That's all that this could be. Two, she's with the Death Riders, or at least she's associated with a member of the Death Riders. So, in my headcanon, Marina Shafir is quite clearly a heel, and if Ronda plays into being a heel, then this can work out. And 3, lest we forget that at the beginning of her first run with WWE, she actually did give a damn, and she actually cared, and she put on some really good matches. Granted, her second run in the company wasn't really the best. We understand that. But at the start, when she cared, it was great. So let us not poo-poo this entirely. Let's just see what happens. And then we can make our judgments afterwards. Okay? Okay. And speaking of Death Riders, let's just go straight into this. Jon Moxley, Konosuke Takeshita for the Continental Championship. Another banging match from both of them in this instance. Of course, they had the draw at Grand Slam Australia. And then this one, of course, no time limit. And they just had another amazing match. Really good back and forth stuff. Each guy kicking out of each other's finishers. But in the end, though, Moxley is able to hit the Death Rider to get the win on Takeshita. Extends his hand out to Takeshita for, sportsmanship. Takeshita doesn't go for it at first, but then goes back and shakes Moxley's hand. And I do believe we are heading towards a Takeshita face turn for sure. But then, lights go out again. We see a video of one Will Ospreay getting ready to make his in-ring return. And not only that, Will's there in the building and runs off Moxley and beats up the rest of the Death Riders. And he's going to be coming for them for what they did to him at Forbidden Door last year. It will be very interesting to see how they kind of book out this feud, because Will does have justifiable reasons as to why he would want to go out after the Death Riders. It's because they took him out of action. But at the same time, it appears as though Moxley has been making his way towards being a face. So it'll be very interesting to see how this kind of feud goes forward. We'll just have to wait and see how this kind of plays out. And then, just relatively quickly, Andrade beat Bandito in their match. It was a really good matchup between the two of them. Andrade hit the Avalanche DM to get the win there. And then, the trios match to kind of round things out. Don Callis family versus Jet Speed and Mistico. First off, Mistico's so, like, this team, Mistico and Jet Speed, were so good in this matchup. Not to take anything away from Fletcher, Davis, and Okada in this matchup, but man, Jet Speed and Mistico were so good. Everybody was so good in this matchup. This match kicked all sorts of ass. It was so good, and I was not expecting the winner in this instance. Mistico and Jet Speed actually won the Trios Championships. Mistico hit La Mystica, I believe, on Fletcher, and Knight went for the UFO splash over Mistico and Fletcher, hit it on Davis, and then pinned Davis to win the match. And so there you have it. Mistico and Jet Speed are the new Trios champs, but that is not all, because a graphic popped up on the screen saying that Mistico is all elite. Now he is going to be under one of the dual contracts because, again, he is probably the biggest star in CMLL, so he's going to be working CMLL and AEW. But very happy for Mistico. He very much deserves that, and I'm very surprised that Jet Speed and Mistico won the Trios Championships. And so there you have it. That is just about everything that happened on AEW Revolution. It was a really, really good show. Granted, it is a long show, but I will take one of these shows over a WWE show that is more ads than wrestling. So that's just my opinion, anyway. But it was a really, really good night from start to finish. Lots of really great matches, lots of title changes, lots of returns and debuts on the show. And yeah, just an overall fun show. But that's just what I think. What did you guys think of the show? Let me know down in the comments below. Next one up on the docket will be Dynasty for AEW. But the next WWE pay-per-view that we're going to be talking about is WrestleMania. So it's going to be a jam-packed April in terms of wrestling content. So be sure to stay tuned for that. But until then, guys, be safe out there, and I will catch you guys next time.